Hi, this is Brian Lazar with the Colorado Avalanche Information Center, and welcome to your weekly Avalanche Outlook. We've had a lot of avalanche activity over the last week. You can see here as we look on the map that we've had avalanche activity in most places across the state of Colorado over the last week, but these are different avalanches than what we saw in previous weeks. So in the last, prior to the little bit of snow we got last week, we were dealing with generally safe avalanche conditions across large swaths of the Colorado mountains. Most of the avalanche activity that we saw was coming in the form of loose, dry sloughing, some of which were big enough to potentially bury a person. But as you can see here, with a little bit of snow and a little bit of wind, we've had about half of our avalanches are now in the form of thin wind-drifted slabs. So we had very, very weak snow surfaces. And so even a little bit of snow on top of all that weak snow has led to an increase in avalanche hazard. Over the last week, we've had 11 people caught in avalanches, including some pretty high profile events. So as you can see in this image, this is a picture of all the very, very weak surface snow. With just a few inches of snowfall and a little bit of wind drifting, we built very thin slabs on top of this very weak snow. And they've been very, very easy to trigger. So here are some images from the last week. Most of these images are the ones that involved people that were caught and carried in the avalanches. So here's one down near the North San Juans on Chicago Peak. You can see that most of these avalanches have a very similar variety. As we move up through the Crested Butte and the Aspen areas, the slabs are generally thin, but as they break, they're entraining a lot of the underlying previously weak surface snow. And so they're entraining quite a bit of volume. They're also breaking wider than you might expect for fairly thin slabs. And so this is starting to catch people off guard because although the slabs are very thin, they may seem innocuous, but they're breaking across terrain features in somewhat surprising ways. People are triggering avalanches from well down on the slope, and some of these avalanches are being triggered from a distance. And so these are the kinds of avalanches that you're going to be able to trigger Thursday and as we move into the weekend, especially with the addition of the new snow. You can see in this image, for example, the high profile avalanche accident that happened on Level Pass. The avalanche was less than about a foot thick, but it broke nearly 800 feet wide. So this is a really good illustration of the kind of current conditions, and it's really showing us that we need to adjust our travel plans and adjust our terrain selection to account for this new avalanche problem. So it looks like this very long dry spell looks like it's showing some signs of breaking, which we are all very, very grateful for. Here's a simulated model run of the snowfall that came in on Wednesday. And as you can see here, we're picking up around 3 to 8 inches across most mountain areas. This is a very, very welcome return of snowfall. This will also lead to an increase in avalanche hazard. So you can expect moderate to considerable or level 2 or 3 of 5 avalanche danger Thursday through the weekend, because if this last week showed us anything, it's that very light loads can lead to a very quick rise in avalanche danger. And those slabs that we saw last week are only going to gain a little bit more volume and become a little bit more dangerous and a little easier to trigger with more snow. We get a little break in snowfall on Thursday and Friday. Snowfall does return on Sunday, and it looks like we get kind of incremental light snowfall as we move into early next week. This is likely to keep the avalanche hazard elevated as we move into the early part of next week. And we're going to really have to manage our terrain to avoid triggering these slabs that are breaking across terrain features and taking people for a ride. So it's a pretty dynamic period. Stay up to date on current avalanche conditions by getting your avalanche forecast at colorado.gov/avalanche or on your CAIC mobile app. We are no longer in low danger. We have to reevaluate how we're approaching the terrain, make conservative terrain choices, stay safe out there, and we will see you next week.